It's no secret that during the 1800s, Europeans went nuts discovering and conquering Africa, much to the continent's detriment. In the heart of the 19th century, when the world was still full of mysteries and empires raced to claim them, one geographical prize stood above all others, the legendary source of the Nile River. And this was the obsession of our two men, Richard Francis Burton and John Hanning Speke. But the thing is, the history of this obsession is best known through a quote from the beginning of the movie. Our object is to discover the source of the Nile. Now, this isn't just a sentence. This is a mission statement. Because before they set out on their journey, Burton and Speke spent a lot of time arguing about what the source actually means. Richard Francis Burton was a brilliant but audacious adventurer, a master linguist who spoke over 24 languages and immersed himself in foreign cultures with a revolutionary open-mindedness. A nonconformist, a man who saw the world not through the lens of European prejudice, but with a boundless curiosity. He was also very keen on getting laid. He was an explorer who didn't just want to stake a flag in the ground and say we were here, but who wanted to know everything about the place he visited. He spoke fluent Arabic and knew many African languages. He was fascinated by the tribes and peoples he encountered and treated them not as inferiors, but as equals. He learned their customs, studied their traditions, and documented their way of life with respect and admiration. He believed that Africa and its people had much to teach the West, and he was eager to share these insights with the world. His partner on this monumental expedition was John Hanning Speke, an earnest and disciplined soldier, a man of rigid beliefs, and a burning, singular ambition to make his name. By contrast, he wanted to be the first to see the fabled source of the Nile and have his name written down in history for making the discovery. So you can imagine they weren't exactly the same person. For Speke, the journey to the source of the Nile was not just an exploration. It was a crusade, a holy mission to uncover the secrets of one of the world's greatest rivers, and to bring that knowledge back to Britain to claim his place in history. This single-minded focus would shape his actions, decisions, and ultimately his fate. Together, they forged an unlikely alliance, a collaboration of starkly contrasting personalities to conquer the mountains of the moon and solve the greatest geographical puzzle of their time. They set off into a world where Europeans were unwelcome strangers, where the landscape was as daunting as the challenges they would face. Along the way, their expedition ran out of supplies and their escorts abandoned them. They found themselves deep in uncharted territory, cut off from the world and alone in a land that was both captivating and hostile. They battled crippling fevers and malaria, navigated treacherous terrain, and were constantly under the threat of hostile tribes and the relentless danger of starvation. Burton even got captured by a tribe and only escaped because he pissed them off enough that they just wanted him to get the hell out of there. But despite these challenges, they pressed on, driven by a shared thirst for discovery. All the while, the subtle friction between their personalities started to boil. Burton's radical, unconventional approach of learning local languages and living among the people clashed with Speke's more traditional, colonial views. Speke grew resentful of Burton's easy camaraderie with the locals, while Burton saw Speke's rigid adherence to military-style discipline as a handicap. However, they survived thanks to the fact that they relied on each other for survival through sickness and despair. And this forced them into forging a kind of begrudging respect for each other. Burton admired Speke's dogged determination and endurance, while Speke came to appreciate Burton's language skills and intimate knowledge of local cultures. Their journey finally led them to the discovery of the majestic Lake Tanganyika, a breathtaking sight that should have been the pinnacle of their partnership. They were the first white men to lay eyes on it. But even in this moment of shared triumph, the seeds of their destruction had already been planted. The two men, sick and exhausted, were at a crucial point. As they gazed out at the vast lake, they were a world away from home and from the men they once were. It was here that their shared purpose fractured. Speke believed that Lake Tanganyika was the source of the Nile, a view informed by his unwavering focus and conviction. Burton, however, with his broader perspective gained from years of living among the locals, argued against it. So then Speke decided that Lake Tanganyika couldn't be the source, and he needed to look elsewhere. He convinced Burton that they needed to travel north to find the true source, and separated from Burton, he traveled north alone. Burton, bedridden with fever and partially blinded by illness, was in no state to argue. Speke rushed back to England, where he sensationally announced his discovery of the source of the Nile and claimed all the credit for himself. And here's where the bitterness really sets in. Let me remind you of that mission statement we heard at the start. Our object is to discover the source of the Nile. Now, to be fair, Speke wasn't technically lying. Like, he did find a source of the Nile. He just didn't find the source that Burton was talking about. You see, the source of the Nile has actually been a bit of a debate ever since the ancient Egyptians figured out that the river existed. You see, the Nile River starts in Uganda, which is east of the mountains that Speke climbed. If you take Speke's route directly north from Lake Tanganyika, you'll end up in Tanzania, far from where the river begins. So in a sense, Speke did find the source, but he missed it by a whole ass country. When Burton arrived back in England, still suffering from the maladies of their journey, he was shocked by Speke's betrayal. The quest to find the Nile's source, which had begun with a handshake and a shared dream, ended not with triumph, but with a vicious public feud that tore their legacies apart. Now, you might be wondering why Burton didn't just call Speke out in front of everyone and expose him as a liar. Well, you're forgetting something really important. Speke was the one who found it. Burton had lost his sight on the trip and wasn't able to prove that the real source was somewhere else. So even though they both returned to England with stories of their findings, they told two completely different versions of the same events. And the world ate up this controversy. The remainder of the film chronicles this tragic aftermath. The Royal Geographical Society became the battleground for their rivalry, with Speke using his charm and connections to win over the establishment, while Burton, an outsider even at home, struggled to have his version of events heard. The public became captivated by the scandalous feud, their once epic adventure reduced to a petty squabble. To make matters worse, Speke made a second, more successful trip to Africa, where he confirmed his theory and further solidified his claim. But there was one more twist left in the tale. The feud was scheduled to culminate in a final, public debate, a chance for both men to lay out their evidence and arguments to a waiting world. But in a final, tragic twist of fate, Speke died in a hunting accident on the morning of the debate. To this day, it's debated whether it was an accident or an act of suicide, an abrupt end that left Burton to tell his story to an empty room, his chance for vindication forever lost. So in the end, we don't know if Speke was lying about finding the source or if he genuinely believed he had done so. But either way, Burton was right that the source was somewhere else. Since then, we've actually discovered that the Nile has two sources, both of which are in Uganda. I'm the host. This is the story of two men brought to you by Curiosity Stream. You know, I've mentioned this before, but streaming services are such a big part of our lives now. There is nothing more frustrating than having too many streaming services and not enough time to watch everything you want. And with Curiosity Stream, it's the opposite problem. It's more like having too much good stuff to watch and not enough time. From classic films to modern masterpieces to exclusive originals, Curiosity Stream has something for everyone.
Text prompting viewers to comment and subscribe. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates on this developing story.